Welcome to the Salesman Podcast, where we interview the world's leading influence, body language, psychology, and sales experts to give you the information you need to close more deals and make more money. Additionally, for sales humor, tutorials, and entertainment, type salesman.red into your browser and come visit the world's largest community of millennial salespeople today. This episode of the Salesman Podcast is sponsored by Salesforce.com. Salesforce.com allows you to sell smarter and faster from anywhere in the world with the world's #1 CRM system. Close more deals, get more leads, and make more insightful decisions today by going to salesman.red/Salesforce to get started. Hello, Sales Nation. I am your host, Will Barron, and welcome to another episode of the Salesman Podcast. On today's show, we have Wendy Weiss, and we're talking about what scares a lot of salespeople and what a lot of salespeople put off: cold calling. We start the show with Wendy explaining why she's known as the queen of cold calling, and then we dive into the nitty-gritty of how to do it, why it's still effective, and how it stands up versus email and social media and stuff like that. Wendy herself is an author, speaker, sales trainer, and sales coach. She's a recognized leader and authority in lead generation. She's been featured in the New York Times, Business Week, Entrepreneur Magazine, and all over the internet. And if you go to coldcalling911.com, you can get a free cold calling survival guide that Wendy's put together for you. So with all that said, without further ado, let's jump into today's show. Hi, Wendy, and welcome to the Salesman Show.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Will.
You are more than welcome. And today we're going to touch on cold calling, where that lies in the world of the email, and a couple of things as well. But the first thing I want to ask Wendy is, you're known as the queen of cold calling. Is that something you come up with from a marketing perspective, or is that something that you were called at some point? How did that come about?
When I started my business, I used to do new business development for clients. And I would get on the phone and I would cold call and I would set up appointments for my client to go and meet with an appropriate prospect. And it was actually one of those first clients that dubbed me the queen of cold calling because I set so many appointments for him. And I liked it, so I kept it.
Amazing stuff. And what did you do before that? Were you in sales, or has it always been a business development kind of role?
Well, I was actually never supposed to be the queen of cold calling. I was actually supposed to be a ballerina. I grew up in Pennsylvania and I moved to New York City, where I still live and work. And I moved here as a teenager to dance. And then eventually, like every artist in New York City, I needed a day job. And so I got a job with a telemarketing company that did new business development. And it turned out I was good at it. Who knew? Because ballet dancers, if you know any ballet dancers, Will, we don't talk. We dance. We don't talk. And so I did that day job for a while, and then I started my own business where I had clients that I'd represent, and I did the new business development for them. And that was where I met that client who dubbed me the queen of cold calling. And then after that, I segued into the business that I have today, which is working with business owners and entrepreneurs and sales professionals and helping them develop new business.
Okay, so you mentioned something then that you were good at cold calling.
Yes.
So is cold calling something that people are naturally better at, maybe due to the levels of confidence, or do you think it's a skill and a process that can be learned?
It is a skill and a process that can be learned. I was really lucky because early in my career, somebody taught me how to do this.
I see.
And learning this skill enabled me to build a business. Now, there's this myth out there, Will, of the myth of the born salesperson. And nobody is born knowing how to do this. One can be talented. It's just like athletes going to the Olympics. If you could be a very talented athlete, but if you don't train in your sport and do the things that you need to do to become highly, highly proficient, you're not going to the Olympics. Same thing here. You could be a really talented person, but if you don't do the things that you need to do to really hone your craft, you probably will not be the world's most successful sales professional.
Mm-hmm. And I totally agree with that, Wendy, but I've met loads of sales trainers when I was in sales and then doing what we're doing now at Upgraded Salesman, speak to sales trainers that they don't agree with that. They believe that people are naturally confident or, I don't know, have what we'd calling a gift of the gab. I don't necessarily think that the key parts of sales. I think there's a lot more to it than that.
There is a whole lot more to it than that. Certainly confidence is important, but lots of times when I'm working with my clients, and sometimes people that are very insecure in what they're doing, once they have a process in place and once they learn some new skills, they then become confident.
So I get pitched all the time from what we're doing with Upgraded Salesman and Upgraded Media on different products and services to help grow our business. And I can always tell the difference between someone who is just reading a script and is just blurbing out the words, whereas someone who's really behind their product and really enthusiastic about it. And then that changes how I feel about the caller. And I get a really good gut feeling usually when someone's trying to pitch me on what is a win-win situation. So what I want to ask you, Wendy, is how much of that is the script being perfect and how much of it is the person really believing in their product?
I'm going to say, Will, it's about a 50-50 proposition. You've got to have the right script. What you say matters. You have to have the right process in place. And you do have to have the right mindset. When it comes to cold calling, the conversation is usually love-hate. That there are a handful of people out there that love to cold call and then everybody else hates it. Mm-hmm. And the opposite of hating to cold call is not that now you love it. The opposite of hating to cold call is that you get to neutral, because neutral is a place that you can function. You can't function if you're in an emotional tizzy that you have to pick up the phone and talk to people that you don't know. So it does start with believing in what you're selling. If you don't believe in what you are selling, go find something else to do. And then having a neutral mindset so that you can say what you have to say and then listen to the response that you get without reading into it or panicking or projecting your stuff onto the person you're talking to.
Okay. And when you're listening for these responses, and this obviously massively depends on the situation, the product and the prospect, but how much should you plow on that first call? If the person says, perhaps not interested at this moment, or drop me an email or something, should you try that little bit further, or should you just respect what they've said and drop them an email and follow up a second time?
Well, I'm going to give you a two-part answer here, Will, because there's really only two reasons that prospects say, I'm not interested. The first is you're not talking to the right person. You need to do your homework. You cannot, there's this myth about cold calling that it's about opening up the phone book and calling anybody. That is not cold calling. That is stupid calling. You need to be very specific about who you are calling. So if you're calling prospect after prospect and they say, I'm not interested, you might have to go back and do your homework because you might not be talking to the right people. That's number one. If you are 100% sure that you are talking to the right people, but everybody is still saying, I'm not interested, what that means is you're not saying anything interesting. So again, you have to do your homework and go back and figure out what is really going to resonate with this market that I'm calling. And so if you do those things, that will actually solve the I'm not interested problem. And then you don't have to worry about how much should I push back because you'll be able to engage.
Okay, cool. And another question running on from that, Wendy, should people be just cold calling out the blue, or should they be sending a quick email to say, hey, look, I'd love to give you a quick call on such a day, or I'm sure you've got structures for those emails, but is it better to just get the person on the phone and speak with them, or is it better to try and tee it up first?
Well, your goal is always to have a conversation. You really can't tell from email. Essentially, if somebody emails you back, you don't always know exactly what it is they mean. Whereas if you can have a real conversation with someone, you're much better off. So I always recommend to my clients, call first and then be prepared. If you get a voicemail, yes, you're going to want to leave a message, and you're also going to want to send an email. We actually do voicemail campaigns because it has gotten harder and harder. As you know, Will, it has gotten harder and harder to get people on the telephone. So we do need a mechanism to get people to respond. And so we do voicemail campaigns in conjunction.
Tell us a little
bit
more about that, Wendy. What is a voicemail campaign?
Well, think of it as a drip campaign for voicemail. So you're leaving a series of voicemail messages. You're trying to reach that person directly. Mm-hmm. But if you cannot, you're leaving them a series of messages over time. And if you've got email addresses, you also send emails. So let's say, Will, I'm trying to call you. I don't get you directly. I'm going to leave you a voicemail and I'm going to send you an email. Okay. I'm going to wait about a week. If I don't hear back from you, I'm going to call you again. If I can't get you on the line, I'm going to leave you a different voicemail and send you another email that corresponds with the voicemail I just left. Mm-hmm. I'm going to wait about a week. If I haven't heard back from you, I'm going to call you again. And if I can't get you directly, I'm going to leave a third voicemail, which is different from 1 and 2. And I'm going to send along an email that pretty much says the same thing I just said in my third voicemail. And I'm going to wait about a week. I usually do a 4-call campaign. So the fourth call, this is week number 4, is slightly, it is different in that the last message is always the move on message. If I haven't heard from you after that last message that I left, number 3, mm-hmm. I'm going to call you one last time. And if I don't get you directly, I'm going to leave what I call the move on message. The move on message goes like this. Hey, Will, I've tried to reach you a number of times to discuss, fill in the blank with whatever it is you want to talk about. I haven't heard back from you. I know you're really busy. I'm assuming this isn't a good time for us to have this conversation. I don't want to make a pest of myself, so I won't be contacting you again for a while. I will check back in 3 months or 6 months or next year. Mm-hmm. If you've been meaning to get back to me and haven't had the chance, I'd welcome the opportunity to discuss, fill in the blank with whatever it is you want to talk about. Then you send the same thing in an email. This is actually the most returned voicemail and email. And there are a couple of reasons for this. First of all, there are people that are in the market today for whatever it is you're selling. They're in the market. And, they got your messages. They've been meaning to call you, but they are busy. And they do, prospects expect that you're going to call them. So maybe you're on the list, but you're a little bit further down, unless it's an emergency. So, but when you say, I'm not going to call you again, you jump up higher on the list and they call you back or they respond to the email.
Yeah.
There are also people, maybe they're not in the market today, but they know they will be in the future. And because you've left some intelligent messages previously, they think, hey, I should call this person. They're not going to call me again. And they will also call you back. One of the things we need to remember, prospects expect us as sales professionals. They think we are going to keep calling them. That is what they think.
It's what they think, but it's also a fair assumption, would you say, that it's your job to keep following up with the person?
Yeah, but what most salespeople do is maybe they call 2 or 3 times, maybe they leave 2 or 3 messages, and then they just stop calling. Mm-hmm. But the prospect thinks you're going to keep calling them.
I'll tell you what, Wendy, I actually quite like it when people are persistent with me. There's obviously a point where I'll either get on the phone with them or email them and say, look, okay, I'm not interested, and then I don't expect any more follow-up after that point, or, perhaps in the far future they can follow up. But if I don't get back to someone and they've left me 5, 6 voicemails, like you're saying, with a structure and a pattern to them, I'm likely to give them a call just to say, well done and persistence. What do you want me for?
Exactly. And hopefully if they've left some good messages, you have a clue as to what they want to talk to you about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Wendy, something that I'm going to ask you now, which I'm sure I already know the answer to, but do you think cold calling is getting less important as email becomes more and more prolific, as people are answering emails from 5 o'clock in the morning, or like me, 5 o'clock in the morning until like 10 o'clock at night, whereas I don't answer my phone in the evenings on business calls, but I will answer email. Do you think that cold calls are becoming less important, or do you think the opposite is true?
The opposite is true in that no matter where one finds a lead, at some point you have to talk to that human being on the telephone. And that's about a communication skill. I do seminars and webinars all the time, and I often do a survey. And I'll say, how many of you have had a referral that would not engage with you, wouldn't set that appointment, wouldn't talk to you on the telephone? 90% of the hands go up. I'll ask, how many of you have contacts in social media and LinkedIn that you really, really want to talk to, but you can't get them to respond to you? 90% of the hands go up. You have to talk to people on the telephone. And email is great. Everyone should use email. However, reaching out by phone is a very valid way of communicating with human beings. It's really the next best thing to being there, to knocking on their door and having that conversation. And I'm going to quote Steve Richard, who's the co-founder of Vorsight. They did a study a couple of years ago, and I quote, after tracking the origin of 635 scheduled meetings with vice president level executives, our reps discovered that 78% of the meetings were scored by conversations over the phone and only 9% through email with no conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So the bottom line is you have to talk to people on the telephone, and cold calling is the basic skill set for engaging someone on the telephone.
Okay, so Wendy, looking forward into the future now then, or projecting further forward into the future, do you think that things like Skype and video calling are going to become more and more common in the world of business and calling, or do you think it's always just going to be voice to voice?
I think it's entirely likely that Skype calling, video calling will become more prevalent, because if you can see the person that you're calling, it's simply another way to make that human being to human being connection. That's what you're doing on the telephone. You're making a connection with another human being in a way that you can't really through email. It's a level higher. And it's not quite as good as being in the same room with the human being that you want to connect with, but it's the next level down. So being able to see them on a video call makes absolute sense.
Just before we come on to your free ebook, which I want to talk about, are you okay to do some quickfire questions?
Sure.
Okay, so we've not prepped on this, so just total first answers that come out. What was your biggest ever sales screw up?
Biggest ever sales screw up. That's a real hard one. I mean, I've certainly lost sales that I think I should have won, but I don't know that I could say there's.
Okay, let me go a different way then.
Okay.
What's one sale that you've lost and that you know why you lost it?
Okay. Well, I lost a sale recently. I've been looking for a new way of engaging with prospects, and I was trying it out. It was the first time I had done it, and I wasn't not that I wasn't prepared, but I hadn't done it before. And so next time I will do it better.
Okay. Who do you think the world's best salesperson is?
My cat. My cat always gets what he wants.
And what techniques is your cat using, Wendy?
Well, my cat is very persistent. I actually, all my cats have these fine traits and qualities. I wrote an article about my Ms. Kitty cat many years ago and talking about this. But my cats today, they ask for what they want. They ask over and over again. If I am not agreeing to give them what they want, they will go and ask somebody else. And they pretty much generally get what they want.
Okay,
they do not take no for an answer, and they do not take rejection personally.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant stuff. Okay, last quickfire question. Over the next 5 years, how do you see the role of a salesperson changing?
Salespeople are going to have to be less and less transactional, because it is so easy to go online and just buy something. Mm-hmm. So salespeople are going to have to continue to add value when they're working with a client or working with a customer, because if they do not do that, it's simply just very easy for someone to go online and buy whatever it is that they need. So salespeople, I think, are going to have to become more and more specialized, more and more customer-centric.
For sure. And I totally agree and echo that, Wendy. And I feel that buyers are skipping parts of the sales cycle. They are well informed in that they can go on the internet, and depending on what your product is, they might be able to buy the product just from your company, but without bypassing you in the first place.
Yeah.
So which is good. I feel this is good for salespeople in that it then gives you the opportunity to the buying into you if they want to buy from you personally, and your personal brand and how you go about the business and the sales and the follow up and the customer care and all that. That's very difficult for someone to replicate, the either internal competition or external competition.
Exactly. If a customer is loyal to you as opposed to being loyal to the product or the brand, it's going to be very difficult for a competitor to take that customer away.
For sure. Well, Wendy, just before we wrap up today's show, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the cold calling survival guide and the other services that you provide?
Absolutely. I want to invite all of our listeners to download my free ebook, The Cold Calling Survival Guide. And the subtitle of the Cold Calling Survival Guide is Start Setting Appointments in the Next 24 Hours. And the Cold Calling Survival Guide is available at coldcalling911.com. And so if you are struggling to get face-to-face with qualified prospects, or to set up GoToMeetings or WebEx meetings with qualified prospects, if you need to kickstart your sales team's production, the Cold Calling Survival Guide is for you. And that is at coldcalling911.com. And it is free.
Amazing stuff. Well, Wendy, I just want to thank you again for your time today, and I want to thank you for coming on the Salesman Show.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Will.